So let's talk about using distributive property. Some equations can be solved by factoring. Consider the following. If you have 0 times 0, you're going to get 0. If you have 0 times a grouping, such as net 2 minus 2, you're still going to end up with 0. Okay? So basically, anything you multiply times 0, you're going to get 0. So notice that in each case, at least one of the factors is 0. These examples are demonstrations of the zero product property. So, the product of two factors is 0, then at least one of the factors must be 0. So, for example, if you have real numbers a and b, if ab equals 0, then either a or b or both must equal 0. So let's take a look. So solve the equation. Check your solutions. So if we have 2d plus 6 times 3d minus 15 equals 0. Okay? Well, we could set each one of those factors, 2d plus 6 equal to 0, and we could set 3d minus 15 equal to 0, because one of those two must equal 0 in order for, is what it's saying, okay? Because the whole thing equals 0. So here we would subtract 6 from both sides. That gives me 2d minus 6. I would divide both sides by 2, and d equals negative 3. And then on the other side, I have 3d minus 15 equals 0. So I would add 15 to both sides, and that's going to give me 3d equals 15, or d equals 5 after I divide both sides by 3. So my roots are negative 3 and 5. Okay? So d could equal negative 3, or it could equal 5. And we could check that. We could substitute negative 3 and 5 for d in the original equation. Well, if I substitute negative 3 in each place there's a d, that would be 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6, plus 6, and that would be 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9, minus 15. Well, negative 6 plus 6 is 0. Negative 9 minus 15 is negative 24, and 0 times negative 4 is 0, so it checks. When we plug 5 in, we have 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 6. 3 times 5, which is 15, minus 15. 10 plus 6 is 16, and 15 minus 15 is 0. 0 times 16 is 0, so it checks. So those are my roots. All right, so we have this problem. It says 9x squared plus x equals 0. Then check the solution. So we got to solve it, then check the solution. So we have two things we have to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is solve. So we're going to have 9x squared plus x equals 0. So the first thing I want to do is factor out anything I can. Well, they both have an x. This would be 9 times x, and the other one is just an x. They both only have an x in common. So you can factor out an x. That would leave you with 9x plus 1 equals 0. Now you set each of those factors. So you have one factor here, and you have one factor here. You set each of those equal to 0. So you would simply just have x equals 0, and 9x plus 1 equals 0. I would subtract 1 from both sides. That gives me 9x equals negative 1. Then divide both sides by 9, and x equals negative 1/9. Okay? Then to check the solution, that was part 2, we would take back to the original equation, 9x squared plus x equals 0. We plug 0 in. We would end up with 0 equals 0. And plug negative 1/9 in. Well, if we take a look at that, we have negative 1/9 squared is going to give me positive 1 over 81. That times 9 is going to give me 1/9. And 1/9 minus or plus a negative 1/9 is 0. So my solution set would be 0, negative 1/9. Okay? All right. So here's one. Check your solution. So we have b times b plus 12. So my two factors would be b and b plus 12. I set them both equal to 0. Well, obviously the first one is just b equals 0. We have to subtract 12 from both sides, and b equals negative 12. All right, we need to check these. So my check, I would have 0 times 0 plus 12 should equal 0. Well, this would be 0 times 12 equals 0, or 0 equals 0. Check. On this one, I would have negative 12 times negative 12 plus 12 should equal 0. Well, negative 12 times 0 equals 0, and 0 equals 0. It checks. So my solution set would be 0, negative 12. Okay? All right. So try this one and then see how you did. Okay. Let's see how you did. You'd have to factor out, so this is y times y, and this is 3 times y. They both have a y in common, so I can factor out a y. So y times y plus 3 equals 0. And then I would set y equals 0 and y plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides, and y equals negative 3. Now we have to check the solution. Okay? So we could say 0 squared plus 3 times 0 equals 0. And that would be 0 plus 0 equals 0, so 0 does equal 0, check. And then we would have negative 3 squared plus 3 times negative 3 equals 0. That would be 9 plus a negative 9 equals 0. And 9 plus negative 9 is 0, so it checks. I have a solution set of 0, negative 3. Okay? All right. So here we are solving each equation. Check your solution. This one's a little bit different. It's not set equal to 0, right? So we have to get it set equal to 0. Well, how can we do that? Well, we have, this is a 3x on the right side of the equal sign. I could subtract 3x. I would have to do that to the other side of the equal sign. Now 3x minus 3x would be 0. Now I'm set equal to 0. 2x squared and negative 3x are not like terms because there's no exponent on negative 3x. So it'd simply just be 2x squared minus 3x. So can we factor that? Well, that's 2 times x, and that's 3 times x. They both have an x in common, so I can factor out an x. And that would leave me with 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay? Then we could set x equal to 0, and we could set 2x minus 3 equal to 0. Add 3 to both sides, and that's going to give me 2x equals 3. Divide both sides by 2, and x equals 3/2. So let's run a check. Well, if x is 0, it would be 2 times 0 squared equals 3 times 0. Well, that would be 2 times 0 equals 0, and 0 does equal 0, so it checks. Let's check the other one. The other root that I had was, if I can come back, 3/2. So I would have 2 times 3/2 squared should equal 3 times 3/2. Okay? Well, 3/2 squared would be 9 over 4 should equal 9 over 2. And this would be, I could simplify down, and it would be 9/2 equals 9/2, which checks. So my solution set to this would be 0 and 3/2. Okay? All right. Penny is a fox terrier who competes with her trainer in the agility course. Within the course, Penny must leap over a hurdle. Penny's jump can be modeled by the equation h equals -16t squared plus 20t, where h is the height of the leap in inches at t seconds. Find the value of t when h equals 0. All right. Well, all I have to do, if h is going to be 0, I put 0 in for h. I can factor a 4t out of each of these because it would be 16, you would have -1 times 4 times 4 times t, and the other one would be 2 times 2 times 5 times t. Well, actually, this should be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times t times t. Now, I have 2 2's and 1 t, so I can factor out a 4t. When I factor out a 4t, that leaves me with -4t plus 5. Set 4t equal to 0. Divide both sides by 4, and t equals 0. I would subtract both sides by 5 on the -4t plus 5 equals 0, and that gives me -4t equals -5. Divide both sides by -4, and t equals 5 over 4, or 1.25. So the dog jumps. Here's the ground at 0 seconds and at 1.25 seconds. So Penny's height at 0 inches at 0 seconds and 1.25 seconds. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at this one. It says Mr. Alim's science class launched a toy rocket from the ground level with an initial upward velocity of 60 feet per second. The height h of the rocket is the feet above the ground after t seconds is modeled by the equation. H equals 60t minus 16t squared. How long was the rocket in the air before it returned to the ground? So you have the ground, you have the rocket. This is at 0, so it wants to know how long was it in the air. Well, all I have to do is go, since each time it hits the ground, the height would be 0, we'll just simply say 0 equals 60t minus 16t squared. Now, 60t is going to be 2 times 3 times 5 times t. Okay? And -16t squared is going to be -1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times t times t. Well, we have 1 t in common, and we have 2 2's in common. So that means I can pull a 0 equals 4t times, well, if I take out 4t, that's going to leave me with 15 minus, and if I take out a 4t, that's going to leave me with a 4t, -4t. Then I would set 4t equal to 0, divide by 4, and t equals 0. And then I would set 15, sorry, that's an ugly 15. 15 minus 4t equal to 0. Subtract 15 from both sides, and I get -4t equals -15. Divide both sides by -4, and t equals 3.75. So the rocket was in the air for 3.75 seconds. Okay? All right, if you got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day.